Yo, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy Bill Mahari here, represent Mahari Nation Sports Podcast. I hope you guys have been having a good morning so far. Salute the entire LDBC and the entire basketball community. If you want more basketball content, tune into Basketball Conversations every Friday night, 9 p.m. Central Time. This is where we discuss basketball related topics, news, debates, and everything else in the world of basketball. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon to get all the latest notifications when I start dropping videos and live streams. So, we got another episode of Morning Historical Perspective here. This is basically my weekly morning show that I drop in about, great players, series, teams, whatever you want me to talk about. So for this one for today, we're going to discuss about one of my favorite athletic power forwards, during the 90s. That is Shawn Kemp, as nicknamed the Rain Man. You know what I mean? For his, his insane in-game dunks and his freakish dunks with his face, with his athletic frame. All right, and you guys were about talk about Zion Williamson in today's game. He is kind of like almost a duplicate to what Shawn Kemp was back in the day. You know what I mean? Basically coming in at 6'10", 230, and then basically when he was lowered down in weight between 225 and 220, he was pretty much one of the most athletically gifted power forwards and most athletically gifted players in the NBA during that time. Um, you know, basically coming from Elkhart, Indiana. He was basically a highly regarded, prospect, coming in during the late 80s, okay? And he was already a McDonald's All-American in 1988. He was a parade first All-American in 1988, second team in 87, and third and fourth team in 86. And during that time, during that McDonald's High School All American team. He played along guys with Alonzo Mourning, Billy Owens, Todd Day, Ray Maybury, Chris Mills, Anthony Peeler, and Stanley Roberts. Okay, and during that game, he scored 18 points, and he was also remembered for one of those coast to coast dunks where he basically dribbled, got the rebound, dribbled all the way up court, and basically threw down a two-handed monster jam. And people were memorized and shocked of how he looked. He was basically an 18-year-old, but had like the build of a probably just like a grown man. You know what I'm saying? This guy was just freakishly athletic. Um, he was committed to basically going to the University of Kentucky. Unfortunately, he failed to score the 700 minimum requirement for the SAT at the time, and he was forced to miss his freshman year under the NCAA's rules of Proposition 48. All right, and because his high school coach didn't like the idea of Kemp being in Kentucky without playing any basketball. All right, um, he suggested to Shawn Kemp, to go directly to the NBA, um, and which turned out to be their excellent decision for him. Even though Kemp decided to enroll in Kentucky, he pretty much left the team after basically he was accused of pawning two gold chains that were reported stolen from his teammate, from one of his teammates at the time. And unfortunately, it was proven to be false. But he eventually transferred to Trinity Valley Community College in Texas, and after spending one semester there, he didn't play in that cause, and then he basically declared himself eligible for the 1989 NBA draft, where he was drafted basically as the number 17th overall pick in the first round by the Seattle Supersonics. Despite the fact that he was pretty much extremely athletic, he was basically raw and basically was the youngest player coming into the NBA, and he had issues trying to find his place in the league. Um, he didn't get much playing time in his first year in the NBA, but he had a huge mentor by Xavier McDaniel, aka the X Man, and he became instrumental in helping the development process of the young athletic Shawn Kemp. By his second season, his skill set began to improve, and his game began to jump leaps and bounds, and eventually he rose into stardom. Um, by his second year in the NBA, he pretty much became the star, and he was pretty much one of the main franchise, players alongside with Gary Payton, Nate McMillan, Eddie Johnson, and Ricky Pierce. They were pretty much a successful Seattle team, and when George Karl became the head coach in 1992, they lead. into major stardom when they basically upset the Golden State Warriors in the 1992 NBA playoffs. By next year, Kemp made his first All-Star team, and he helped lead the Seattle Supersonics to the Western Conference Finals, where they ended up losing in 7 games at the hands of Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns, in which Charles Barkley outplayed the athletic Shawn Kemp in 3 of those games. But it didn't mean that Shawn Kemp didn't make a good impression. He had a 33-point game in Game 5. He had at least had a 24-point game in Game 6. And although he fouled out, he pretty much played. He pretty much scored 22 points in that Game 7 effort. And so pretty much his game began to improve. He added a jump shot. He added the post up game. He also was able to be a better free throw shooter in the process too. He was able to get to the line more frequently because when he started in the NBA, he started between 73 to 66%, but then he stuck around between the 74 to pretty much 78% from the foul line. He showed major improvement in his game, and he rebounded efficiently, and he was a guy that can also block shots, and he runs the floor very, very well. And when you had Gary Payton basically leading the fast break and throwing up lob passes, I mean, it kept the Seattle fans on their feet every single time they played up in Seattle. But the pinnacle of his career came in during the 95-96 season. All right. After going through 2 straight seasons of losing in the first round of the playoffs. All right. Kemp, Payton, and the Sonics had their best season in franchise history when they won 64 regular season games. Okay. They won 64 regular season games, and Kemp had the best year of his career by far. He averaged 19.6 points per game, 11.4 rebounds. He shot 56% from the field, 74% from the free throw line, and 41% from 3-point range, and played 79 games throughout the entire year. Just an unbelievable efficient year. And Gary Payton didn't have a bad year either, as he won Defensive Player of the Year award when he led the NBA in steals that year as well, leading the Seattle Supersonics, past the Utah Jazz in a tough 7-game series, and then propelling them to the NBA Finals, where they went up against the 72-10 Chicago Bulls, led by Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman. And even though they lost the first 3 games of that series, they came back and won the next 2. But Kemp played superb in that NBA Finals. He averaged 23.3 points per game and shot 55% from the field and grabbed 10 boards. And he finished a close second in the Finals MVP voting, almost becoming the second player to win the award despite being on the losing team. Since they started handing out the Finals MVP award, the only player that has ever won the Finals MVP from the losing side was basically Jerry West back in 1969, and Kemp was very close to getting it. You could make the argument that Shawn Kemp should have won that Finals MVP award in '96, and I wouldn't argue you with that whatsoever. Unfortunately, all good things, pretty much came to a quick end because when Kemp signed his contract extension in 1994, due to the league's rules of collective bargaining agreement at the time, they pretty much forbidden any adjustments to any contract until October of '97. Um, he was eventually outraged, but even though he was clearly understanding about that rule in the contract negotiation, you know what I'm saying? Things really went sour when the Sonics decided to sign Jim McElvain to 7 years worth $33 million. And despite knowing those CBA rules and restrictions, Kemp was furious at the fact that a guy that never even played one All-Star game, that guy that barely even made a roster and was supposed to be a quote-unquote excellent shot blocker, somehow gets 7 years and $33 million. I don't think Kemp took that very, very well, and he threatened to basically sit out the entire season, and he held out a training camp for 22 days, and eventually he would came back, but that whole contract issue played into his mind. You know what I mean? It really played into his mind, and he didn't. And even though he still was pretty much averaging, putting up the same close averages that he pretty much did in 1996, he was not the same Kemp. He wasn't the same ferocious and wasn't the same focused Shawn Kemp that was the previous year. Even though they won 57 regular season games, that contract situation played into his mind, and unfortunately, the relationship could not repair itself. And eventually, you know, him, Shawn Kemp was traded during the 96-97 offseason as part of a three-team trade deal with the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Sonics. Okay, which the Bucks sent Vin Baker to the Sonics. The Bucks sent the Cavaliers sent Terrell Brandon and Tyrone Hill to the Milwaukee Bucks. Okay, and then the Sonics sent Shawn Kemp to Cleveland. And unfortunately, the trade didn't work out for either team at all. And when Shawn Kemp, went to Cleveland, this is where his weight problems and all the outside stuff came into play here. All right, then let me get a drink while we get ready to tackle this. So when he basically got to Cleveland in his first year, he was still, the same physically, imposing Kemp. He was still averaging 18 points per game, and he made one more All-Star team before 1999. Now after the lockout short now during the lockout period, okay, um, the the biggest part was that Kemp was going through weight problems. He was going through personal problems outside of basketball, and he was going through drug related problems, mostly involving with alcohol and cocaine. And and then unfortunately, his weight problems, manifested itself, during the lockout shortened season when reportedly he came in weighing at 280 pounds, but then the Cleveland general manager at the time revealed that he was actually weighed in at 315 pounds. And unfortunately, this became a huge downwards pattern for Shawn Kemp. He wasn't able to unshed the weight. Even though he had his most efficient year scoring wise with averaging 20 and a half points per game, he was not the same driving force. He was not the same physically imposing athletic player that he once was. And unfortunately, his skills diminished, his production diminished, and everything else diminished around him. Then he was traded after the 99-2000 season to the Portland Trail Blazers, okay? And the problems, continued to manifest itself. And at, in his first season, pretty much ended early when he was forced to go into a was forced to go to drug rehab or else, face suspension. And he played 2 seasons there and pretty much didn't do much at all. He pretty much was a guy who was going to come off the bench, and he was no longer the same guy that he once was. And it was really a sad shame, you know what I'm saying? And after he spent 2 years in Portland, he signed as a free agent with the Magic. And even though he was able to help, release some of the presence lost by Grant Hill after he was going through another series of ankle injuries, he only played, 1 season there, and he left. He basically was cut as a free agent. And there were a couple of years down the line in the mid 2000s where he was looking to try to make a comeback in the NBA. He was starting to, to get back into shape and, was trying to get his personal issues together. And he was almost close to signing with the Dallas Mavericks. And, unfortunately, he failed to appear, and they tried to reschedule a workout. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, that didn't work out too well. Then, 3 months later, 3 months later, after he was basically arrested for, drug related charges, the Denver Post, had also another report that he basically slimmed down to his playing weight from his All-Star years and wanted to make, another comeback in the NBA. But unfortunately, the Denver Nuggets, declined, going for the agent Shawn Kemp. And even though he drew some interest from the Bulls in September of '06, he missed the scheduled workout. And unfortunately, he lost every single chance to return back into the NBA and finish it on his own terms. But although he had an opportunity to play one more year of basketball in the Italian league, he pretty much did a pretty decent job there. He played three preseason games, didn't do too bad, but then he returned home after basically damage done to Hurricane Ike, and he didn't come back to Italy after that. So at the end of the day, guys, he went through adultery related issues. He's got 7 kids. One of his kids also played basketball for the University of Washington, and he used to own, some sports bar and some several other businesses in Seattle before, ultimately they closed down. But the problem with Shawn Kemp was that after the contract situation and what he went through in Cleveland, everything went down onto a downward spiral, and we never really got to see the full completion of what he could have been. I mean, this was a guy that was literally entering his peak into the NBA, basically around his mid 20s. He was really touching about what he could have been as a basketball player. And the sad part was is that he was only 33 years old when he basically left the NBA. And at the end of the day, people say about he should still get some Hall of Fame consideration. Unfortunately, he's not going to get it because he did not fulfill what he could have been as a basketball player. He never, despite making the All Star team 6 times, you know what I'm saying. And basically making 3 times second team All NBA. He never really became a defensive. He didn't win any other defensive player awards. He didn't. He was. Let me put it like this. He was the kind of player that never reached to his ultimate potential, and unfortunately, he didn't max out. He just that the personal issues outside of basketball really did him in, and it's a very sad thing because this could have been one of the greatest power forwards in the history of the game, and unfortunately, drug-related issues, alcohol-related issues, weight issues, and also family-related issues basically ended his career on the spot, and he was never the same player ever again. And so, at the end of the day, guys, he had a really, really good career, but unfortunately, he'll never get into the Hall of Fame. But it doesn't mean he will not be remembered. Certainly, those years in Seattle that he had with Gary Payton were some of the best years of basketball that you'll ever find. And he'll definitely be remembered as one of the best athletic power forwards, during the 90s. But tell me what you guys think in the comment section.